But so just as an overview, you don't have to write these things down. This is just kind of a game plan of what we're going to be doing with the lecture. We're going to be looking at how we define family and how we define marriage. Then we're going to be moving into kind of what the social constraints on who we can and cannot marry are. We're going to be looking at the gender division of family labor and kind of how these are all by institution today. And then finally, it's just kind of not its own section, but kind of just throughout, we're going to be looking at how the family directly and indirectly affects our lives. So to begin, what is family? I mean, it seems like a really easy term to define, right? If I asked all of you, you'd probably say, I know what family is. But do you? So I just want to ask you guys, what is family to you? How do you define family?
Your parents and siblings. Sorry.
Parents and siblings? Support system. Anything else?
Basically anyone who lends like emotional support, whether it be a non-blood relative or not.
Okay, so everybody kind of has, there's a lot of different ways to define family, right? So let's just, so let's look at some of these different ways to define family. So the U.S. Census Bureau defines family as consisting of two or more people, one of whom is the householder, and they are related by birth, marriage, or adoption and living in the same home. So householder, I mean, it doesn't really seem like a real word, but it is. Basically what that is that's just the person that's earning the majority of the income. So, I mean, I don't know, this seems like a fair enough definition, right? But I mean, it's kind of restricting in some ways because you have to be related by birth, marriage, or adoption, you know, and then also you have to be living in the same housing unit. So what about divorced families or things like that? That wouldn't really fit into this particular definition. You guys need more time, or are you good? So then moving on to the dictionary. This is the place where you always go, right, whenever you want to know what a word means. So the dictionary defines family as a social unit that consists of parents and children, and they can be living together or not. So this is a little more open when it comes to if they're living together or not, but yet it's also more constricting because it has to be parents and children. Don't you think that maybe there's like families out there that don't consist of children? There's a potential for that. We'll move on to the sociological definition, the most important one. So most sociologists define family as two or more individuals who maintain an intimate relationship that they expect to last indefinitely, or in terms of a parent-child relationship until that child is an adult, and who usually, keyword usually, live under the same roof and pool their incomes and household labor. So this one's a lot more broad than the last two, don't you think? So, you know, it's just saying two more individuals, they have to have an intimate relationship. Intimate could, I mean a number of things. It doesn't necessarily have to mean romantic. And then also it says usually lives under the same roof. So this kind of leaves room for divorced families or other families that are living apart. Okay, so we've kind of talked about these three definitions. So I want you to keep these in mind because what we're going to talk about next is if these individuals fit these definitions of family. So I don't know if you're familiar, hopefully you are familiar with Full House. If you're not, don't tell me, that just makes me feel old. But most of them are related by birth or marriage, but one of them is just a friend. So it's like, but they're all kind of a family unit, right? Like, would you agree that they seem like a family? But yet they're not really encompassed in these definitions. And then what about your friends? I mean, just by a show of hands, how many of you have friends or a friend that you maybe consider as your family? See, so quite a few of you. But friends are not included in these definitions of family at all. And then what about your pets? I mean, personally, I consider my pet, I mean, my dog is absolutely my family. I don't have children, I have a dog, so And as you can see here, I mean, this is the homeless guy. This is kind of the only person he has. But pets aren't really included in this definition of family, but maybe they should be, or maybe they are for some people. So then we come to this point of what exactly is family? I mean, how do we define it? And the main point is that the definition is very contextual. There's really no right or wrong definition of family. It's differs. Every person has a different definition. Every society has a different definition. And it's also fluid, and it changes over time. So I mean, in the 1920s, 1950s, things like that, you know, we thought a man, a woman, and their children was a family. You know, the man would go out and earn the money, and the woman would stay home with the kids and cook and clean and things like that. But maybe today our definition is a little bit different. So what I want to do is watch this short video. And basically, I think it's a Dateline thing. I'm not really sure what it is, but they talk about how we define the family today and how maybe this is kind of changing. So let's just pay attention to that, and then we'll kind of talk about it afterwards.
There is landmark research out tonight about an institution
Can you guys
most
hear
of
it?
us are a part of, the American family. And not too long ago, a wife, a husband, 2 kids, that was the definition of the American family. But divorce, gay parents, unmarried couples with children, all that is changing what we think. So researchers set out to determine, how do we define an American family today? Here's John Berman.
There's the Addams family, the First family, my family, and the Partridge family. I think I love you. All called family, but what counts as family?
What we find is that people are moving away from a traditional definition of family, and they're moving towards a modern definition of family.
The modern family, indeed, comes in many combinations. Nearly 100% of us agree a husband, wife, and kids counts as a family. No kids? 92% say that's a family. Those kids make a difference.
Children provides this, quote, guarantee that move you to family status.
For instance, an unmarried man and woman living together, hey,
Hi.
under 40% say that's a family. Give them kids, it jumps to 83%. That's up 5% since 2003. A gay couple, 33% say that's a family. With kids, 64%. A 10% jump in just the last 7 years.
People right now are really reevaluating their views about same-sex couples.
What about pets? More than half of us say they're in the family, but 2 guys living as roommates. Sorry, Felix, just 10% say they're family. In the end, when it comes to defining family ties and determining family matters, you might say it's all in the family. Because 60% of us now say if you consider yourself a family, you are a family. Welcome, and hold on tight. John Berman, ABC News, New York.
Okay, so that video brought up some kind of interesting things. So let's kind of think about that. It really brought up the fact that for some reason in the US especially, we're kind of having this perception that children are this really important part of the family. I mean, look at the married couple. Only, what was it, 95 or something like that percent of people thought that they were a family without children. You give them kids, it was like 99.8 or something. I don't know who the 2.2% is that don't think that's a family, but I guess their definition is different. But, I mean, even if they take the same-sex couple, it was only 30% people thought it was a family before children. You throw in children, that pops up double to 60%. So there's this real phenomena with our perception of what a family is when it comes to seeing children as an integral part of it. So what I want to ask you guys is, what do you think? I mean, do you think kids are kind of needed in order for someone to be considered a family? Or do you think that you can be a family without children?
I think you can be a family without children, but it requires more than 2 people.
Okay. Could you explain? You mean like extended family or things like that?
You probably need 3 people can be considered a family. 2 people are just a pair.
Okay. That's interesting. What does everyone else think? Do they agree with that, or differing thoughts? Back to the back.
I think that if it's just a married couple, then that's not considered a family, but if it's like a mom and like a single mother and her child, that's considered a family.
Okay, so you agree with this video that
Yeah.
you have the same
that, you can't, I don't really think that a married couple is necessarily a family. But if you throw a kid in, it is, but you might take a kid out, put a pet in, like a dog, and I think that's just as much a family.
Yeah. So it's like you need to have, so basically what I'm hearing is most of you think that you have to have that, not a kid or a pet, there has to be more than two people. There has to be some other component to that before you really think that that's a family. So that's really interesting. And then I don't know who gave, I hope this isn't paint. I mean, I don't know. I really hope they didn't give a real paintbrush for this kid to chew on, but it's cute nonetheless. So then we've talked about family, so let's talk about marriage, which is, really related with family. So what is marriage? It has the same problem as the definition of family. It's very contextual and it depends. I mean, each society, each culture, and each person has a different thought of what marriage is. Although it does seem very clear-cut. I mean, you think you get married, bam, that's it, right? But there are a lot of different types of marriages. I mean, there are arranged marriages and free choice marriages. So, I mean, I assume that most of you probably know what arranged marriages are, but just in case you don't, it's basically when the couple doesn't choose their mate. Their parents or a matchmaker or even probably the village elder or something like that will choose who you marry. And a lot of times you don't even see this person until your wedding day. And I know for a lot of us, this probably seems like something that's very traditional and like in the past, but for a lot of societies, this still occurs. But in our society, we really lean towards free choice marriage. And what that means is we believe that we can pick anybody to marry, and all we need is love and romance. So, and actually we have this huge emphasis on love and romance in our society. This is a very westernized American thing. Because I know that, I think I was reading a study, 86% of college students actually said they would not marry unless they were in love. So I mean, you guys are college students. How many of you would not marry unless they were in love? Pretty much everybody. Anybody that's the opposite, would anybody marry if they weren't in love? Just marry any person, anywhere? Yeah, so we kind of agree with that. Then there's also other types of marriage. I mean, there's monogamy. So basically that is really the traditional sense of marriage in our culture, at least. And that's when you only have one spouse. But there's also other kinds of marriage, like polygamy and things like that, which also occurs in our society, but not as often, I would say. Polygamy is when you kind of have multiple spouses. And then underneath of that, there are several different kinds of polygamy. Polygyny is when a man has multiple wives. And polyandry, which seems maybe less popular, I don't know, is when a female has multiple husbands. So you can see there's a lot of different types of marriage. And I don't really know what type of marriage this is down here, where you have like 3 wives and 2 husbands. Community marriage, I don't know, I really don't know what the technical term is for that. But yeah, there's just a lot of different kinds of marriage. That's the most important thing to remember here. And then also there are societal constraints on this marriage. We have this huge assumption, in our society especially, that we can marry anyone we want. We marry based on love, But this often isn't really the case. There are constraints that kind of hold us back on who we can marry. And some of the ones we're going to talk about today are religion, social class, and law. So the most important thing to remember here is just, look at this guy. This is each one of you, whether you realize it or not. And that's kind of a horrible and terrifying thing. You guys have that one down, or do you need more time? So religion. In the U.S., 80 to 90% of us marry people with our own religious values. Which, I mean, that makes sense, right? We're going to marry people with the same values as ours because it's just going to work out better. And even in Canada, only 1 in 5 people marry across religious boundaries. And of course, this differs within the different religions. Each religion, some religions are probably more strict than others. But, I mean, this is going to affect who you marry. You're not going to go seek out someone who's not the same religion. Or maybe you have a family that is a really strict religion, and you have to marry the specific person. So that's definitely a huge constraint on who you choose to marry. You might even eat different food. You have different ideas on how to raise your children and different values. And even if the couple can get over their own personal differences, then you have families attached to this couple. And they're probably not going to get along. I mean, think about upper class and like lower class. What are the likelihood that they're going to mesh? So it's just going to be a really troubled marriage, probably. And also, I mean, what is the likelihood you're even going to meet these people? So say you're a waiter or a waitress and you're like in the working class, and then you're going to marry the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. What is the likelihood you're even going to cross paths? I mean, you're not even in the same social circles. So obviously you're more likely to kind of marry someone in the same social class. And then there is law. So these are actual legal restrictions rather than just societal or social restrictions. So there's age restrictions. You have to be a certain age before you consent to marriage. And this differs based on states. So if you're 18 and you want to marry someone who's 16, but the age to consent to marriage is 18, then you're constrained. You can't marry that person until they turn 18. Then there's also same-sex marriages. This is something that has really been in the news and talked about in the past few years. And I mean, it's legally recognized in some areas, in some states, but not in others. So say you're living in a state that restricts same-sex marriage, but you want to marry a partner that is of the same sex as you. I mean, that's just, you can't do it. You legally are restricted from doing it. And there's also the incest taboo. You're not allowed to marry your own relatives. You can't marry your mom, you can't marry your brother, you can't marry your sister. And in some states you can marry your first cousin, but other states you can't. So I mean, you know, returning to this assumption that we have this free choice of who we can marry, then if it really is true, if we really can choose anyone to marry, then why do we have all of these restrictions, absolute legal restrictions, you know? So it's just something to think about. Maybe you're not as free as you thought, which is depressing. So now we've talked about marriage, we've talked about family, so let's kind of combine those two and kind of go into the gender roles in the family. So historically, as you can see up in this picture, men and women have had very specific roles in the family. You know, the father, he goes to work and makes the money and comes home. The mother, she takes care of the children, cooks and cleans, and does all that fun stuff. But over the years, these roles have been shifting. So you can kind of see in this picture, the women are starting to kind of enter the paid labor market and hire more and more. And some of what allows them to do this is technology. So I mean, think about, you know, cleaning your floor, cleaning and cooking even. I hate to use these examples, but they're easier now. You know, there's TV dinner meals, there's vacuum cleaners and other things like that that just work much better. And also I think a huge advancement is like birth control. You know, as a woman, I can choose when to have my kids and how many kids I have. So obviously that frees me up to go into the labor force because I don't have all these kids to figure out what to do with. So the gender division of household labor. As you can see, in 1965 to 2011, there's been a pretty big shift here. In 1965, mothers were only working 8 hours per week outside the home in paid work, whereas they were using 42 hours to do housework and childcare. And the fathers were doing 42 hours of paid work and only, 6.5 hours a week doing housework and childcare. cleaning, and things like that. And that's their second shift. And men don't generally have a second shift. Not saying that they don't ever, but usually it's the women that do this. So kind of the question I want to pose to you guys to kind of think about is, are gender roles really changing, or are women just kind of taking on an extra role? Because, still 80% of women are doing this housework, so are they really changing, or are women just doing twice the work? What do you guys think?
I think they're definitely changing a little bit, because you see stay-at-home dads a lot more than you would have 10 or 20 years ago, and I mean, women definitely want to be in the workforce more nowadays, but I mean, I don't think it'll ever reach like an even standpoint, because just like my wife's gonna expect me to come home and cut the lawn and do all the yard work, she's still gonna probably make dinner and do the dishes. So
You don't see yourself flipping it. You don't think you'll be the stay-at-home dad.
not true.
Anybody else? Any ideas or thoughts?
I think also when the wife goes to work, a lot of the time, if there's a young child, you put them in daycare, or you have someone to take care of them. So I mean, that takes a little bit off of her.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our next point. I mean, the involvement of either men or women, it really is affected by the presence and age of your children, as well as your socioeconomic status. Because, I mean, like you said, daycare, but you're probably going to be a well-off family income-wise in order to afford daycare. So like a lower-income family that both people have to work, they're probably going to have to kind of shift around their roles and share the responsibility of taking care of the children and the housework and things like that. Oh, and then I've got this great picture here. It looks like, I don't know if this is a real picture, it's like an advertisement. It looks like an advertisement. It's kind of small so you can't see it, but even the baby has a smug look on his face. So this could be you guys. Yourself a baby sling. So then I want you to think about your own family. What was kind of the division of labor in your own personal family? I mean, when you were a kid, who took care of you the most as a child, and then who kind of earned the income the most? Anyone want to share their family?
My mom stayed home usually for a while, and then my dad would go with.
The traditional family.
Well, it was the same way. Took care of us all the time. I was always worked.
Okay, so you guys are kind of the traditional.
My mom actually worked more, but my dad just had more of a nurturing personality, so even when I was around him less, he was still taking care of me more than my mom was.
Did he have a job? Or did
Yeah,
he,
they
okay.
both had a job.
Anybody else want to share?
My dad is actually the primary caregiver. He worked probably 60 hours a week, and then when my parents eventually got divorced, I mean, he was granted custody, full custody of the two kids, which is pretty rare even now. But yeah, he would work and then take care of us when my mom, smoked cigarettes and entered online chat rooms.
So there's a perfect example of a male second shift. You heard of that?
Talk to pedophiles online.
Okay, so they kind of shifted that care to extended family. So it seems like when you were younger, it shifted from then. And see, that usually is a big component there. Younger children, usually your mother might take care of you, but then once you start getting older, she kind of goes into the labor force and things like that. So hopefully your family isn't this family. This looks horrible, but maybe it is. I don't know. Actually, I think this is a man. I'm not sure. But and this one is just for fun. I mean, it's a baby holster for the good, the bad, and the cuddly. I mean, you don't want that girly. I mean, look at this last slide. You're a manly man. Your roles are changing. You don't want the girly sling, right? Traditional masculinity. You want that baby holster. So, yeah, that was fun. Alright, so now we're going to do a short activity. We're just going to look at two different sitcoms. We're going to look at an older sitcom and then a modern sitcom and just kind of try to compare how the families have maybe changed over time or things like that. And the older sitcom is Leave It to Beaver. I have never personally watched the show. I don't know if you guys maybe heard of it. It's really old. But it's perfect for the traditional family. And the current sitcom is Modern Family, which hopefully you've all heard of.
you say that?
Well, they don't have to be smart. They don't have to get jobs or anything. All they gotta do is get married.
Well, Beaver, being smart isn't exactly a drawback to marriage.
Well, if they don't get married, well, they can become dressmakers or cut people's nails in a barber shop or take care of kids and a lot of other dumb stuff.
Well, Beaver, today girls can be doctors and lawyers, too, you know. They're just as ambitious as boys are.
You mean there's no dumb people left in the world, Mom?
Beaver, is there something bothering you?
Well, kind of, Mom. We're having an intelligence test tomorrow in school, and I don't know if I'm gonna pass it.
Oh, Beaver. Beaver, of course you will. Your father did very well in school, and I get good grades. You had a grandfather that was a professor. Why, he was considered practically a genius.
Yeah, it's nice having all that smart stuff in the family, Mom. I just hope it didn't all get worn out before it came to me.
Okay, so then we're going to watch the Modern Family clip.
The family is one of nature's masterpieces.
Come on, Coach. You gotta take that kid out. You wanna take him out? How about I take you out?
Honey, they're 0-6. Let's take it down a notch.
This is the story of three very unique families.
Oh, this must be her dad. Her dad? Yeah. No, that's funny. Actually, no, I'm her husband. Don't be fooled by the, Give me a second here.
Jane and Gloria are newlyweds.
I come from a small village, very poor but very, very beautiful. It's the #1 village in North Colombia for all the... What's the word?
Murders.
Yes, the murders.
Phil and Claire have a traditional family.
Dad! Look! Just shot me!
They're only plastic BBs.
Funny, uncool.
That's it? No. The agreement was that if he shoots someone, you shoot him.
He's got a birthday party.
You can shoot him afterwards, he'll be home at 2.
I can't shoot him at 2. I'm showing a house at 2.
What about 3?
No, he's at a soccer game at 3, and then, we gotta leave for that dinner at like 5. 4:15, you could shoot him at 4:15.
Yeah. Sorry, dude, it's on the calendar.
Mitchell and Cameron.
We just adopted her.
Bring her home for the first time, huh?
Look at that baby with those cream puffs.
Okay, excuse me, but this baby would have grown up in a crowded orphanage if it wasn't for us cream puffs. And you know what? Now to all of you who judge, you small-minded, ignorant few. What?
She's got the cream puffs.
Oh.
We would like to pay for everyone's headsets. They belong to three very different families.
Why are you smiling?
What?
Dad, you have got to talk to Mom.
Well, honey, your mom isn't always as cool about things as, what is this thing?
Count to 3. 1, 2. Okay. What the hell is that? Is that us?
Wings. We're floating above her, always there to protect her.
Well, that's reassuring, right, Lily? Tore you away from everything you know, but don't worry, things are normal here. Your fathers are floating fairies.
To survive one very modern world.
I want to talk on the phone when I love her.
Oh, for God's sake.
Honey, she's 16.
Oh, it's okay for you to take it over love her?
Hey, watch it. Sports guy chess ball. Yeah. Oh, sorry. We're all in this together. Yes, we are. Yeah, I'm cool, man. That's my thing.
Come on.
Okay, so what I want you guys to do now is just, you don't have to move around or anything, but just kind of maybe talk to 2 or 3 people around you. And I want you to kind of discuss, if these sitcoms are any indication, how has the family kind of changed over time? And I want you to take into consideration everything we've kind of talked about throughout this lecture. Things like, our gender roles changing, how the family is defined, and what is consist of, or even maybe like marriage and constraints on that, things like that. So, and then you can also talk about, if your families are similar to one of these or not. So just go ahead and do that. I'll give you about 3 minutes, and then we'll come together and see what you discussed. Okay?
Like, I'm serious. No, divorce, not about. No, both sides of my